Good afternoon, Australia, and good evening, America. Welcome to everyone listening across Europe and Asia and into Canada. This is Insight Intelligence, and my beautiful co-host Mario Bekes will be joining us momentarily. But before we get on with the show, just a quick reminder, we have the lovely Hannah ready and waiting. So if you're listening on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, or Twitter, Hannah has the links to anything that we talk about in the show today, and more particular, the links to connect with Mario on social media, via his website, via his email. And I encourage you to reach out and do that this week. Now, each week we do a welcome to country, and that's an incredibly important part of each and every show. So before we get on with the show, I want to respectfully acknowledge the people of the Yugoslavia language region, the traditional owners of the land on which we broadcast and meet, and pay my respect to the elders past and present, and all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people listening and watching today. Now, this is the next show, the sixth show in our series with Mario Bekes, and it's called Insight Intelligence. And the reason is that Mario is an intelligence specialist. He grew up in Communist Croatia, went through a war, started in public service in the army, and now is a natural-born leader, public speaker, result-driven, best-selling published book author. He's a relationship builder, a facilitator, and he has incredible decades and decades of experience in investigative techniques and interviewing, interrogation methods, corporate, human, and competitive business intelligence. And why is this important? You'll have to go back and listen to the rest of the shows, and we will tell you more about it today. Mario works across the public and private sectors, so in government and in business, across Australia and indeed globally. He has proven investigative techniques and strategies and has a highly professional team standing behind him. Welcome back to the show, Mario.
Thank you, Toni, for having me today again in your show. I'd like to say thank you to all viewers and listeners of the Toni Lontes show. As well, I'd like to say big thanks to the people in US, your team, who is standing now behind this show and making sure that we have the smooth and seamless streaming. And thank you for having me again.
Oh, Mario, thank you. It's very comforting knowing that TJ and the team check our sound and video before we go live to air. It causes me to relax. As soon as I hear TJ's, Doug's, or Don's voice before a show, I'm like, okay, everything's as it should be. We're all ready to go. Let's do this. Mario, this week we want to focus on training and education. Now, you're really passionate about training and education and its importance, particularly in the area of surveillance. So I want to talk about the types of training that you can provide for your clients, the corporations and businesses that you work with globally. And then I'd also like for you to talk, if you can, about the extensive training and education that you've done, and that includes a master's in intelligence analysis, and that important component of what you do around education and training. So let's start with you and your experience and training to this day.
Well, thank you, Toni. Thank you again for having your show. Thank you to all viewers and listeners who are currently right now with us. And I truly believe that there will be, that being said, with this interview with you, they're going to be empowered and understand the power of the knowledge. We can all start with understanding that information, I always come back to that point, information is the most valuable commodity in a business. But that doesn't work well if you don't know what you're looking for, how you're looking for, and how to analyze, and how to, at the end, how to utilize this information. People usually go by impulse. I was blessed enough that my life started very early. at the age of 14. I was in special schools then in communism. My grandfather sent me a part of military school. There was educational schools. They called the summer camps. And they were filtering. Actually, it was recruitment. You're learning about politics, you're learning about economy, you're learning about all this stuff. But after all, you are the guy who is, you know what's happening around you, but you're very happy to um, absorb that knowledge. Of course, everything is like a mild and mellow, but then you can, as you're growing up, you are being exposed to more and more real stuff. And my very first touch was when I was 17 years old. I was being approached by the one, like in the movies, like a raincoat type of guy, the
Yeah,
hat
yeah,
and
yeah.
everything else. And he
Every
told
time
me,
you tell me that story, Mario, I have that vision of the real
but
long,
it
dark
is, Tony.
overcoat and the hat,
Yeah.
maybe the faint smell of cigar smoke.
Oh, look, it was it was compulsory then to start smoking. I didn't
Yeah.
smoke, but you need to have some drinks and everything else. But in hindsight, because I didn't want to take a drinks and I didn't want to be the part of that, you know, class
Environment.
of just being in a pub and everything else, actually was working very well for me, because that was a prerequisite that you don't socialize with the people in public except when you are being tasked to do so. So that was
Ah,
when first exposure. Then the following months was being more tense, and then finally war broke out in Yugoslavia, as we all know. Croatia fought for democracy, independence, something similar
yeah.
like Ukraine again. I need to make the parallel. And I found
Yes,
myself
it's
yeah. So I found myself in the position to being trained, but war was war. Then they don't need spies
mm,
or intelligence officers. That's be reserved for the older generation. And to be truthful, if I was being positioned to 18 years old to be intelligence officer, I didn't know nothing. I have no exposure except theoretically and a little bit practical exercises. But what happened in 95, I was being enrolled in police academy.
yeah.
To the first, one of many trainings was forensic investigations, which I say criminal investigations,
Yes.
forensic investigations. So that was the first exposure. Then second one was counterterrorism intelligence, counterterrorism, combat, and the list was going on and on and on and on. That finally I graduate. I'll call the graduate,
Mm,
98. Um, in Department of Foreign Affairs in as an intelligence security operative for my government and being positioned in Croatian embassy in Canberra.
yeah.
So that's not a secret, that's my that
It's
is
pretty
my
cool,
curriculum.
Mario.
Yes.
That's
Well,
pretty cool. Let's just acknowledge that young boy that had such a tumultuous upbringing and had such terrible things happen to him is now in a diplomatic position within an embassy in Australia.
that's
Let's
correct.
just acknowledge that is great strength and growth to get to that
Thank you,
point.
Tony. And then suddenly find yourself in an environment when you are 27 years old. For
Yeah.
my standards, that's very young. And, you're far away from your home with such responsibility, accountability, where you need to apply your knowledge. And then, as I stay in Australia, I finished the diploma in fraud investigations and many other certificates. And now I'm just on the cusp just to get that certificate, master's. I finished the diploma in intelligence art.
Yeah.
And then now just a few more small essays, and then I get my master's in intelligence art. So
Wow.
yeah, hopefully that will be, and that insatiable thirst for knowledge is something we
Yes.
all drive. I suffered that syndrome. uh,
Mm.
you've always been surrounded with people who finish university, and then you look behind yourself and say, like, but I was being the war, like, but nobody cares. With the war finish, everybody takes the people with the skills and so
Yeah.
these things. But I was very fortunate enough that my government invested tremendous amount of money sending me abroad as well to the schools, which
Mm.
for these conversations are not important, but relating to the counterterrorism intelligence and so these things. So
Mm.
yes, I did quite extensive education and training, but that is not enough, Tony, because
Yeah.
what I gain pride of inside intelligence group, it's not just me, but the people who work for them for my business, because without them, my business will not exist. And I acknowledging
Mm.
everybody, single one who works for inside intelligence in any capacity, because these people bring in that wealth knowledge. And what I always envisage is to be challenged in conversations over coffee and everything else. My education doesn't corresponding education in Australia. That's number one.
Yes.
But modus operandi is almost similar. However, you witnessing and people in US can witness as well. Fraud and crime evolving.
That's the same
Policing,
across the world, isn't it?
yeah, policing doesn't evolving. Police is always retroactive, more than proactive when it comes to investigations. So something needs to happen to investigate. There's a term called the preliminary investigations, which we're teaching how to conduct. But that's all, chasing the hunches and some type of information when you can afford yourself time. But, government sector is very busy for those things, and they are concentrating themselves and effort and assets and money and logistics on the cases they're requiring immediate attention. Yeah. In corporate world, as I say, I'm very proud to say that people who work for Intelligence Group, they're people who bring their wealthy knowledge as well. Yeah. So that's a position myself, I'm the smartest guy, regardless of my academics, regardless of my previous experiences, crime, fraud, workers' compensation claims, anything, they evolving, people becoming more skilled. And how they become skilled? They become skilled in very simple terms, Toni.
Yes.
Society educate them. You can go on Google and, there's plenty of books, how to learn to steal, how to learn to make the fraud, how not to be catched with it. Yeah, very sad, very sad. So the education is very important asset for any organization to have in their disposal. Perhaps they don't have the skilled people in organization because, not every organization can afford the time and effort and money to continuously follow the trends on the market. When I say market, worldwide.
Yes.
Past 2 years, and you'll agree with me, working from home, it is increased a lot of problems for organization when it comes to the fraud, identity theft, espionage. And the only person I can say that successfully worked from home was Hugh Hefner. He had no problems. He has everything. So, so he didn't care for those things because he has everything on his eyesight.
Yeah.
But education is a theory. Education is necessary. And as I mentioned before, me personally, I suffered that syndrome people have at universities and I don't have. So you always been, where I grow up in society, lower class, considered lower class rather than being seen as somebody else. Taking further education on language, which is not mine, which is English, caused a lot of strain for myself. But
English
I
is tough, isn't it, Mario? English is a tough language.
It is, truly it is. You must be very careful what you're saying, how you're saying. And one word, if you don't spell properly, in my case, it's like many words, people don't hear nothing afterwards. So I need to slow down. As you remember, and many listeners perhaps should, the turntables, long plays, put on the 33, it's normal, then you slow down, everything else.
Yeah.
So slow motion. But it helped me quite a lot to get in contact with many academics. I've done a lot of research to University, Charles Sturt University. So I combine all that knowledge, but yet is not fulfilled all criteria to fight the fraud.
It's huge, isn't it, Mario? The investigative surveillance, crime, fraud. It's a massive, broad, extensive body of stuff that you need to know.
Yes, but Toni, you'll agree, and the listeners as well. I respect that everybody finishes some type of school, but if I say I finished my investigative course 1995, today it's 2022. That's a 27 years, in past. That is quite a lot of time where the crime evolved. So investigative techniques evolving as well. So you need to be updated continuously. I can say that I have a benefit of my work that I can see to the request of the work we to conduct that it's a new methods be developed and how the fraudsters start thinking, what tools they're using and how they're using those tools.
Yes.
And in hindsight, it's very important that education must be understood as a theory. But prior to this, all my knowledge is not good if I can't utilize and pass on people who are interested. That's correct. Because, we have a limited time on this planet, as you know.
Yeah.
And the knowledge is there to be shared, not to keep, for myself. Of course, we keep some secrets for ourselves, of course.
Yeah.
Uh, but that must be said that education is not over. You can split in two parts. First, it's a theory and then a practice. But as well, you must have the desire to learn more. So that's the world I'm bringing from in corporate world. It's my experience in government sector, in police, in military intelligence, counterintelligence, security, military, and diplomatic intelligence, diplomatic security, plus everything else. And then when you combine all this, you can understand that exposure I did have helped my clients to learn more quicker by utilizing less amount of time and money. And plus as well, I like to hear, from everybody else, their stories. And, because as I said, like nobody's the smartest person, but education is one of the most important components in a life. And if we stop educating ourselves and then transfer that theory into practical field, then there's no successes, because you can't, you, Toni, as well, we spoke about this one. Who will say that 2 years before we will have the COVID? Who will say that we'll conduct interviews via the Zoom, that we're going to share the knowledge online? Are we doing this now? So that's very important to be acknowledged.
Mario, I'm actually, when you were talking then about online, I'm actually thinking of that whole online and digital world and the crime and fraud and ID theft and stuff that has been escalating in that realm. And I understand that part of what you need to do is actually educate corporations on how this stuff is increasing, and that they need to actually have risk management and thoughts around this before they're actually in a place where they've been defrauded or their identity has been stolen. And that's where you work in terms of education as well, Mario, isn't it?
That's correct. And when you talk about education, I was looking the way how to educate clients with my knowledge, to unleaven my knowledge. I couldn't influence somebody, he's going to adapt, adjust, or utilize my knowledge. So I need to find a different form, how I can leave that knowledge for the times when they can be in, I don't know, on a plane. So I start writing the books. Books, very powerful tools. You need to control those books, who to go and everything else. But books, again, it's a theory. Books can be very dry, and nobody can steal nothing from your books. They can copy your wording or content, but what they can't copy, it's your way of execution, how you think and how you're going to utilize tools. And so that's where the training comes in practice. And that's where we in Instant Intelligence, prior to COVID, we had a lot of those trainings. We've been in cooperation with the two big legal firms who were kind enough to allow us to use the premises where we called our clients. And as well, a part of my knowledge, of my experience, I'll bring the guest speaker from their firm to talk legal aspects as well, so they can be armed even more. So it's not just what Mario says, what Mario, but as well, if I say that investigation should be conducted this way, the barrister lawyer will come and say, like, this is your rights, this is how you can conduct, this is, you can go there. So I was looking the way the client doesn't need to wait for us to be engaged, but rather to understand not entire investigative process, but to understand that there is a tools on their disposal to start tackling your problems within organization. And that's where my biggest pride comes, and that was for me biggest achievement that we could deliver. Now COVID comes, of course.
Messes everything up.
But one thing is, like, when we listen, Toni, you and your guests, it's interactive, you can see faces, but when you're doing education and you don't see the faces, you don't know how much you engage people. So I need to learn that one as well, how to present. So it's not like rocking up and say, I'm going to do this. So in my business, there's a Professor Klaus Smallman, who is his biggest academic, one of the biggest academics. Then is a Dr. Debbie Koloros, who is a psychological profiler. So when we sit to develop the training module, one of them is the psychological profiling, which is very important to people understand. And these questions, how somebody lies, how somebody cheats, I can't
Mario,
answer those questions. I'm
oh,
not the expert.
I
She
was
is, yes.
going
That's
to
why.
ask you those questions.
Yeah, like but as again, Debbie, she's a very well educated, trained, and knowledgeable person with a
Mm,
high um, practical knowledge. So she
yes.
done quite a lot, and she can answer those questions. So
Mm,
so the clients we altering training aspect needs, client needs, or we can start with understanding what investigation is. And
yeah.
every module break it down through my book, Workplace Investigations, which I wrote with Professor Klaus Smallman.
Mm.
Actually, he was my mentor. He was, that one who was checking everything and, making sure that
Oh,
people understand. So it was a good
yes.
learning curve. So when the clients come and then Professor Klaus Smallman comes and talks about his aspect, how to utilize data, which we
Yeah.
scientific approach of the data you collect in your investigation, which I didn't know, because again, is something was called the modus operandi system. That was being always applied. You remember those times again, those times when you come in library and you hide the book and
Yeah.
then looking
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
card. You see, that's a
Yeah.
card system today. It's a little bit more digital when you classify somebody or the person or event
Mm-hmm.
on the way how it's committed, when it was committed. So you try to match something happen in the future. You go back and say like, okay, there was a fraud. You look in that card, fraud, stealing the books. There's a names, a potential suspect,
Ah,
Mario, Toni, or something like this. So instead of going depth, it's like a library,
they
so you can
had that
find.
they had that Nutella rort going in 2022. That's them.
Yes, that's correct. So
And they've swapped to
education.
peanut butter in 2024.
I think, truly I believe, like I was reading to the article, how Nescafe or Nestle,
Yes,
somebody got
yes.
it, 500 kilos of cocaine within coffee. Surprise, surprise, right?
Oh
So,
my goodness, that would be deadly.
yeah, like, but, obviously somebody imported, by utilizing coffee because we all know that coffee, actually, it's
It,
neutralizing the smell and
yes. So that's
grounds,
why they
which,
do it, Mario, is because it puts the dogs at airports or ports off the scent of the cocaine. Does it
yes.
completely obliterate the smell?
Well, the dogs are being trained, and I have a privilege to see how the police dogs has been trained.
Oh, yeah.
It it's a terrible process. It's not pleasant for not the animal, and like if the dog smells the cocaine, of course, he's been trained how to smell the cocaine. So you need to cover that smell. But again, it's been discovered because you have X-rays, the tip-offs,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
people discover things. So I try to say there's a call something modus operandi system. So people need to understand, how the crimes can be discovered, how can be recorded, and they've been teaching them, the part of factual investigations. So to understand
Yes.
what a factual investigation is, or surveillance investigation it is. And through the working group, as we educating them, at first hour we discussing theory, let's go do practical. What was your questions? So instead of we just hammering them what I know, you ask us, how would you like to apply this in your organization? So,
Mm,
the panel of the Professor Smallman, Dr. Debbie Colors, and myself, we tackle this. So through my knowledge as an investigator, scientifical and psychological. So we utilizing all these knowledges together to clients being armed and understand, and as well
mm.
have the the board which client gets if there's some new type of crime is being committed or
Yeah, that
fraud.
was. I was just going to say, Mario,
Please.
how do you manage the three of you in your core team?
Yeah.
How do you manage to keep up with the new and innovative ways that crime happens? Like, how do you keep up with that?
You can't win against the fraudster if you don't pick as a fraudster.
Right.
There was a good movie with Leonardo DiCaprio
Uh
and
huh.
Tom Hanks, Catch Me If You Can.
Yes.
And it's a true story.
Yes.
Frank Abigail. This guy educated FBI. So, the FBI start learning how the fraudsters think, what they do, and everything else. But it was good for that stage when you have
Mm,
the checks, when you have the credit cards swiping, everything was actually
yeah.
easy to falsify. today terms, not them. So FBI start thinking as a process. So for us to understand what's happening, one side is investigative work, we confirm, and as well there's a abundance of information on internet where the people inquiring, okay, about how to do something to trick insurance companies, for example. So it's a closed forums, but you have access to read. So like that's one of the terms. And as well, I like to talk to the people who done work for us to talk. So like, what do you think what's happening in that case? Because some cases are highlighted straight away. Most of them they are ordinary people, genuine claims. But those who stand out, then I go through the process of talking to the people who done investigations, what was collected, how it's collected, and as well with the partners who provide us information, government agencies who can supply some databases and so on. They say that so you put all this together, and you can look for the trend is appearing somewhere around the world. And usually that's a task of government. The government has a very clear idea what's happening on the market, so you can confirm your suspicions based on a couple of informations that this is the case. And then you go back to client and say, this is what has been done. In questionnaire, if you're doing let's just say employment, we teach them how to do diligence properly. Then they apply that knowledge straight away. Most of them they do, because it's it's a benefit for the client. So what good I would be if I hold that knowledge for myself and see the client suffer? I'd rather give that knowledge ahead and say, this is how we're seeing, this is what should be done in future. And they say, thank you very much. And of course, client is accept this and utilize this as much as possible they can.
Yeah. Mario, I want to just go back a little bit to risk management. And,
yes, please.
And because that's one of your expert areas of knowledge, I want to talk about how important it is for corporations and business to really look at the risks that could impact them, their business, and their people, and how you integrate risk management in your training.
Thank you, Toni. That's a great question. Risk management is a big thing. It is a big thing for many decades, particularly as a society advanced in employment in the new industries and facing new risks, from the theft, from the fire, from the rain, the floods, just
cyber attacks, data
cyber attacks,
theft, all of that.
Nobody can be the risk management in everything. My field is information. But we must understand that risk management is based on a couple of rings. First one, it's environment and physical security. They have technical security, mechanical, cyber security, information security, and that's in simple level. So like no risk manager cannot tackle all the problems simultaneously. Risk management has been advanced, as we know, to that level that actually when COVID happened, nobody knew what to do. And that's the problem.
Yes.
I saw the problem straight away. Very first early stages, I said to myself, logistics is going to be nightmare.
Yeah.
Now, if we're excluding the conspiracy theories and say, okay, virus is not real, it's a problem because people stay at home because of the, no government wants their citizens to be hungry or being in disadvantage or something like this. So I saw logistics is going to be the biggest problem. This is the first step in risk management that every company needs to feed themselves all with a manpower, informations, with the goods, services, and they can export this same to the market. Risk management failed miserably by my standards.
Yes.
And I think it's actually declining. And we can see now as well when it comes to risk management, nobody, because risk, basically what I say, there's a 4 ways how you can tackle the risk. You can acknowledge risk, you can minimize risk, you can transfer risk, or you can accept the risk.
Yes.
So instead of going to depth. So they changed the name of the standards from 36,000, sorry, it's a new one, old one's 4,600, whatever it was, I forgot now. But, and basically, I forgot what was that called 10 years ago, I think 4,600 ISO. But the name is changed. The framework stays same. So there's the 4 ways how we can tackle the risk, right? So like when you have the risk, either you want to accept, you will not accept, and you're going to minimize, you're going to transfer. That's the point. But when it comes to the risk management in past 2 years, I can see that past 2 years, nobody was working on the risks. What's going to happen when everything comes back to normal?
Yes, good point, Mario.
Without naming. And look, I give the pride when I was working, I still carry that knowledge and sharing my clients. We had a war room and we practiced what was called a pre-mortem analysis, pre-mortem or predictive analysis.
Yeah.
So it's very important that people understand we always had the post-mortem analysis when something happened, retroactive. So we analyze Mario and Toni, still the 2,000 cans of the Nutella. And we drove to San Francisco and, let's go find out how they did it. But pre-mortem analysis, it's a highly sophisticated exercise when it comes to train the staff, which basically is you create a war room and you tackle the problem. So one problem, you create 3 worst case scenarios and how you're going to respond to them. And they put a time limit. It's a PR, it's a marketing, it's a reputation, it's a logistics, it's communications. And I again say there's you created in that exercise you create a couple groups, battle groups I'll call them, on different levels. So if one can function, second one can function, and so on. Yeah. Most corporations don't adapt and not adjust this because they had never been exposed this. Fortunately, I did have surpassing this knowledge, and that's called the Ausfriedkrieg on German, which is basically you need to create elements in your organization. When one cell doesn't work, another works. Risk management in Australia, it's in steadily decline.
Yeah.
And look, we can see on the airports. We saw the airports, the messes. Like, wow, I was Jesus.
As you're saying that, I'm thinking about risk management, and this is my nursing hat going on. So back 20 years ago, we used to run those desktop scenarios around pandemics and where stuff was stored. So back then, we had huge warehouses of flu vaccines, gowns, gloves, masks, antibiotics, etc., etc., etc. Now, that was always part of our risk management matrix when I worked at high levels within health. But what has happened over successive governments since my time was that seemed to have fallen off the radar. So I was absolutely shocked that that had somewhat appeared, from my opinion, to have fallen off the radar, and we were not prepped in the way that we were 20 years ago. Because back when I started nursing eons ago, we were always told that there will be epidemics and then pandemics, and that we don't know when that would happen, but that it would absolutely happen because the epidemiologists had predicted it. And that is decades and decades and decades old. And back then, we prepped for those scenarios. Each health service district had a risk management plan, and on that risk management was pandemic and how we managed that risk. But somewhere along the line, that's fallen off. And I'm guessing that that's the same for corporations, that they might have existing levels of risk, and for whatever reason, successive changeovers of CEOs or whatever, those risks might have fallen off. And I'm guessing that when your company comes in, you can actually go, well, actually, this needs to be back on your register. This needs to be part of your risk management. This identity theft now is actually done digitally and electronically, and this is what you need to do to make sure that doesn't happen to your corporation. So you actively do that sort of work, don't you, Mario?
That's correct, Toni. As I said at the beginning, education is a theory. Without training, practical training, you can't prepare yourself properly, right?
Correct.
So the training must be done. And I understand corporations are not military. Even police can do these things. Police is always busy, and they have the different tasks ahead of themselves. But corporations, they should and they must prepare themselves for the scenarios we're doing in this war
Yeah.
rooms,
Yes.
pre-mortem analysis. Because, Tony, you'll agree with me, perhaps doesn't look tragic if somebody lose, I don't know, 50 reams of paper, not delivered that day. But you'll appreciate it's a domino effect. So it's a lot of small
Definitely.
things happening around us without connecting, which is called the chaos theory. The chaos theory doesn't happen just by accident, it happens because of some event somewhere. And it's scientifically
Something
proven.
started it. It's got to start somewhere.
And that's what happened in corporations. Once when the fraud happened, it's going to happen on all levels before, you can't just plug the gaps. You
Yes.
need to understand how they're going to, because responses are very crucial. And when the response is being created, that's what carries the corporation beneficiary analysis. And they understand how much money they saved, how much time they saved, and, reputation and so on, so on. There's so many elements. So that's what we do with the corporations. That's what we bring, that value. Again, I can't talk about the cameras. I can talk about the computers. We know that one.
Yes.
We bring the value of risk management interrogation, which means that we're creating the scenarios which is going to reflect the company by utilizing information risk management framework, which basically it's all relating against around industrial espionage, the PR, publicity, marketing, sort of these things, right? And but then you can add on these elements. What if camera stops working? What it is? And then you are actually give them the tools to understand that risk management is not just going with a piece of paper. Somebody goes, I have the lights, have the chair. Okay, you done all of this, but suddenly you work from home. So what's going to happen in case there's no electricity for 24 hours in Sydney, let's say? Just freak of nature. How are you going to conduct the business? I'm sorry. There is always somebody on this planet that's going to take it, your spot, my spot, not just because they can, they will, because they must, because there's a gap. So if you don't work 24 hours, so we try to find not just the problems, but solutions as well, because every problem has a solution even before they happen. That's how the risk management works. You always have the solution even before problem happen. And how is that demonstrated? Easy. When something happened, we always have response. So we're creating the solution. So is a bandage or is a concrete? So it's always solution before problem happens. So problems we're creating, solutions exist. And that's with risk management. It's very important to be not just monitored, trained, ticking the boxes, but to be trained into what that risk management it is, how it's going to reflect organization to the war room operational training, and then finding the solutions for the possible problems in the future.
Yeah. Mario, you created Insight Intelligence Institute, which is an institute for training and education. And we're going to go next week into all of those different ranges of education. But I know you're really proud of Insight Intelligence Institute. I want to know when the moment was that you thought, okay, I need to set up an institute to make that education accessible. When was that moment?
Well, that was like 4 years ago when I was very first time sitting with Professor Clyde, and we spoke about, everything and anything. And then he told me, why you got all this knowledge or your abundance of the skills and experience if you can't share? And I tried to understand how I can share something. And I was a little bit shy. It's a different thing. You write a book, you give somebody a written document, it's being
completely
corrected.
Different.
And then I realized I don't care what my competitors do, because my competitors are not my concern. They have their life, whatever they do, however they do. I can't spend my time and effort just checking on them. So instead of this, the best way I saw myself, it's time to give the back. And the best way to give back is through the academy. Being surrounded myself with the people like Dr. David Kolaros, Professor Clyde Smallman, alongside with me and the other guest speakers. That is to combine our unique set of skills and knowledge and experience, and give the clients those tools to be better prepared to tackle their problems prior they become the bigger problems, small problems to be investigated rather become bigger one. And of course, I was very proud for one simple reason, because when I surrounded myself with people like a Clive and Debbie, I got value to myself. I validated myself that my knowledge, when
Is
nobody,
valuable.
that's correct. So like these people not stay next to me if they think that I'm just doing BS work. I mean, I'm just me.
Correct.
But that's correct. So instead of this, they invested their knowledge, their experience for me to I learn how to articulate what I want to say, rather to be another one, Mario, me, and I know everything. No, it's not true. So that's where the pride it is. And when I saw the clients responding to our invitations for 2 hours, 3 hours training sessions with the new trends emerging, supported with my staff from my academy, with legal providers, I saw the clients enjoying this. And that's my pride, to see that message has been passed, not just me, and that they are very happy with that one. So they can see we're caring for their business, not just for the, we're making money with them or on them or something like this.
And Mario, part of your part of the components that of the training from Insight Intelligence Institute is around that idea that you provide best practice. And so
That's correct.
Can you explain, I know what best practice is, but can you explain to the audience what best practice is and why it's important in education and training, particularly around intelligence?
First prerequisite is that we need to go around legal time framework. So we, everything must be done in accordance with the law, legislations, and acts. So there's no gray zones.
Yeah.
So that, we can all talk, I will do this. Toni, everybody is great in theory. Like everybody in theory can build the bridges overnight. It doesn't work that way. So the best practice for the companies it's based on legal aspects what the government provides, through their legislations, acts, and laws. Then secondly, it is to the framework given to us how investigation should be conducted, and that framework of investigation satisfy legally challenges on a court of law if they go there. So because most of our investigations end up with a legal team, either with the insurance bank or with the claimant as a no-win, no-fee solicitor.
Yes.
So that's a best practice. So when you go to court, and I've been in court many times, when magistrate look at you, so like, what's your qualification? Okay. But when you start listing qualifications, experiences, they say, okay. And then they ask
that
you,
gives you authority, doesn't it, Mario?
That's correct. Thank you.
Authority in that court as well as in real life.
That's correct. Because every report we send out of every our investigator, when I signed off, they don't care for investigator. They care, who you are, Mario Bekes, that you can sign off something like this. So that's a best practice. Government legislations, acts, and laws. Then you have the best practice of report preparations, writing, and submitting, so that if the challenge in the court of law can be stand there. And thirdly, most importantly, is you add the weight of all these learnings to our
from everyone
research.
Across the globe, isn't
That's
it?
correct.
So,
to research. So, like sometimes people always mixing between investigation and interrogation. Interrogation is totally something different. And there's applications there which I can't go there, but it's heavy stuff. People don't understand. But when you have investigations in corporate world, you can't go beyond the law. If you go beyond the law, you are liable. You're in trouble. And I rather be in a court of law, say, we done this, and this, and this, by no breaching the law. And look, a magistrate says to me, well, thank you, but we don't need your statement. Rather to say, your statement is false, you lied, you are, this and that. So that's how we're educating clients as well, through our experience as a best practice given to us by government, by corporations, and we combine together and we inserting that research which Clive and Debbie adding on top of this.
Yes.
by visiting all these fancy places on the internet, and they learning what's happening there. So how the people think and how the people
I was
operate.
going to say, Mario, part of the education and training discussion also leads into research. How
That's correct.
important is research in ongoing education and training, particularly in your field of expertise?
Intelligence involved quite a bit. My field is human intelligence. That's mean interaction between
Mm.
human to human.
Yeah.
You have the people who are working for you and people who work for them. So it is usually gathering intelligence from person to person. So that evolved
Mm.
not that much, because we still have that test of people to talk, people to show off, and you become a target, then you create a target profile, then you find a way how to approach social media engineering, social engineering, or social media engineering,
Yes.
social engineering, and so on. So on. What is the adequately being accepted that people love to post online? So it's much more easier to gather informations. When it's come to investigations, this is where the trick starts. What do you do with the data collected? I
Yes.
can't tell the clients you need to use this. So instead of me forcing them to read something, I say, like, we have the in training session. Would you mind to come? Topic of conversation is Toni and Mario, riding on the waves in Brazil and stealing all the cocaine, from the forest. And they say, okay, so how they come to Brazil, how they learn. And so, like, you see, this is the
Yeah.
case number, this and this and this. And they pick it up straight away and they say, oh, okay, interesting.
Mm.
And when you have the 2 or 3 people from organization,
Mm.
Toni, they go back to organization. They say, this is what the guys told us. So it's not an opinion. It's a
Yep.
fact base. You need to support
Mhm.
with the findings, with the links, with the statistics. So
Yes.
when they go back, they say, like, this is not opinion based. And that's what that makes us very good in what we deliver. So
Absolutely.
instead of just opinion, and we support this with the findings, to the facts, to the counter
Yeah.
arguments, and they can say, okay, now I understand. So
Mm.
you need to draw quite a lot of parallel researches simultaneously to support what you're saying, and that's what that
Yeah.
makes us very, very
Yeah.
good in what we're delivering.
Mario, you picked up I picked up on a word that you used just before, human intelligence. It's a great word combination. Can you just tell me a little bit about what you mean when you say human intelligence
Mm.
for the
There's a
audience?
several disciplines of intelligence. We have technical intelligence, geospatial intelligence, abstract intelligence, signal intelligence. As a society progresses, the means of transfer information as well has been developed.
Uh-huh.
What didn't change from the beginning? It is geography. So we always have
Yes.
the planet Earth as it is. So that was always being collected, all these maps and everything else. So it's become geospatial intelligence now. It's a different satellite imagery and adding 3D dimensions, and it's a different story, right? 40,
Yes.
60 years ago, that was not the case. But human intelligence, it is that in a nutshell, when a target profile has been developed, that somebody needs to be approached for the purposes of gathering information or
Yep.
placing information to
Mm-hmm.
that person,
Mm-hmm.
that's where my work starts. How I
Ah.
gonna extract information from some certain person without they being suspicious that they giving us informations, or you
And
turn
how are
them
you
into
going to tell if they're lying when you ask them a question? That's sort of like,
I go back now to modus operandi system.
yeah.
So before you start your work, you already know this person social behavior,
Yes.
environmental behavior,
Yes.
working behavior,
Uh-huh.
acquaintances, family, and everything else. Then you come with a quite um, relatively strong, powerful, truthful story.
Yeah.
And you create that environment. So, like, it's not like in the movies that, the beautiful lady comes and, like,
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
glasses, records everything. What is here, it's very hard to get because
Mm.
through my working experience, when I was working particularly in government,
Mm.
people you need to approach, they've been trained very well. And they will recognize
Yes.
when it's become somebody suspicious, I mean, interested in you, who you are and
Yes.
everything else. Then inform the levels of the hierarchy and they acting accordingly. I mean, usually
Mm.
they remove you from the picture because you become the target. They understand this. How they know they don't lie? Because we give them the truth. So if they reply with a
Mm.
lie, they become aware. I'm talking too much. They reply with a, if you give them truth and they, reply with a lie, then you know that they already
That
know that you
you're onto
approached
them.
them. So it's elements with
Fascinating.
all this happening over the period of time. It's not
Yes.
nothing certain.
Yes.
And when somebody look, Tony, you must understand something. If somebody gonna approach you, to know information
Yeah.
from you, they already know so much about you through surveillance,
Yes.
through the
Yes.
monitoring
Through
online,
all of
everything
that
else.
other stuff that you do before you get to that point where you're approaching them, you've got a whole body of info ready in
Yes.
your. Yeah.
But sooner or later, everybody leaves some evidence. As a signature.
Makes a mistake, leaves
That's correct.
evidence, doesn't think out something completely. Everyone
Yeah.
does that without a
Yeah.
doubt.
And then comes the moment when you need to, let's go call this person asset. You need to remove
Yep.
yourself from that asset.
Yep.
So you never work in your environment, where you live, work, and everything else. So it's
Yes.
entire methodology behind this. But
Yes.
before I approach somebody, I know so much about that person
Yeah.
that person he can't refuse the truth. If he replies to
Yeah.
me the lies,
You're gonna
for example, I
know.
know that Tony loves to be online every Friday between 12 and 2,
With
and I said
Mario.
with Mario. That's where the
So they
corporations
can't
actually form.
actually be in Brazil stealing that cocaine.
That's correct. And another
Hmm.
thing which everybody should notice, working from home actually created already many loopholes for economic espionage. So
Ah.
it's not just for terms of Bitcoin, right? I was doing something about Bitcoin, some articles, and Bitcoin was the biggest tool. But corporations will never know how exposed they are when this things start as going south and sour.
Yeah.
So it's basically training again, education of the staff, how to recognize somebody, approach them, why they
Yes.
approach them, and questions asked. You must in terrorism, you can't understand what a counterterrorism it is if you don't understand what terrorists, who they are and how they do. And
Yeah.
only then you can apply those things. And same goes in investigations and intelligence and anything else. You must start thinking with your knowledge, expertise, how they think. In human intelligence, it's quite
What's
opposite.
that?
I need to be 3 steps ahead. I need to know
Yeah.
3 days you're ahead.
Yeah.
And I say people love to talk about espionage, but I say like life in human intelligence, it's very difficult because
I can imagine.
yeah, and I had the problems later on in my life because I couldn't perform 100% anymore because um it's a human life at the end, right?
Yes.
And a
Yes.
lot of
Yes.
people
Yes.
become collateral.
Yes.
And but now in
That's
corporations it's
hard.
different. So when you work in government, it's different. But in corporations it's
Yep.
different because in corporations I'm teaching them how to prevent possible intrusions by less intrusive methods, because less intrusive methods are the open source intelligence. People
Yes.
think doing researches, but I'm teaching them how to prevent possible approach by competitor in terms of industrial economic espionage
Mm.
through means of social engineering and so on
Yeah.
and so on.
Yeah.
And people see that as like, wow, I didn't know this. And I say like, well, it's not how much you protective you are, Tony. People forget to have the family who love to talk. People have
Mm.
and as again, people love to show off. So it's not hard to
Yes.
pick it up
Yes.
somebody.
Yes.
And but yeah, hopefully people understand. If they want to like to know more, feel free to contact me. And now
Fantastic. And on that note, we are completely out of time. I want to
we are again.
encourage people today to jump on Insight Intelligence, the website for Mario and the team, because it has loads and loads of information about the Insight Intelligence Institute, the trainings that they undertake, the courses that they do,
That's
and
correct.
how you can engage with Mario and the team around risk management and management of all the horrible things that could happen to you if you don't actively and proactively try to protect yourself, your business, your corporation, or the government.
That's correct.
Mario Bekes, As always, it's an absolute delight talking to you. I also want to encourage people to jump on to mariobekes.com and look at Mario's books. As I said, Mario knows that I've been listening to the audio version of Mario's book, and it's truly magnificent. So I encourage you to jump on, have a look at the book, download the ebook, the Audible version, or buy the paperback. Blood-Soaked Soil is phenomenally well written and well spoken by Mario. So a quick shout out, if you have any interest in spies, espionage, fraud and crime prevention, jump on to Insight Intelligence, have a look at what Mario and the team do. It's amazing stuff, and I'm really grateful that I get to share my Friday afternoons with Mario Bekes. And that, my friends, is your lot for this week. Thank you so much, Mario, for
Thank you,
sharing
Toni.
so freely and so abundantly with the audience today. Guys, we'll have a replay show next week because Mario is
Wait.
overseas.
Yes.
And I am actually interstate, so we're going to have a wee break, but we'll be back the week after that, where we're going to talk more in depth about the training available through Insight Intelligence Institute. And we need to get off the air now. So thank you, Mario,
Yes.
and bye for now.
Thank you, Toni. Thank you, team.